Here we are. It's Thursday again, everyone. It's so good to be here and in your company and celebrating someone who I have come to just adore her and her work. We got to celebrate with her and her daughter not too long ago, and that was amazing. But tonight we're celebrating not one, not two, but three books. If you don't already know Marjorie Maddox, you've got to Google, you've got to get in there. You have so many books to choose from. We were doing a count before we started recording: 17 poetry books, 4 children's books, several anthologies, and a collection of stories. Tonight, what Marjorie will be sharing with us and reading from is the 3 most recent books: Seeing Things. How can I look it up when I don't know how it's spelled? And boy, have I oftentimes thought that. And then also Small Earthly Spaces. I would do a bio, but we'll be here for a while. I want to say welcome to the newly retired but fabulously busy Marjorie Maddox. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Malika, for having me. This is one of my favorite places to read. It's always a very warm audience, and that's all kudos to you, Malika, for creating this community of like-minded poets and inspiring individuals. So I'm excited to be here. So yeah, I'm going to read little tidbits. Selections from each of the new books, maybe spend a little more time on Seeing Things. Seeing Things was probably the most difficult book that I've written. It deals with 3 generations of women: my mother, myself, and my daughter. And so it looks at daughter of a mother who's entering the early stages of dementia, mother of a daughter who struggles with depression, and then my own background of survival of abuse. So there's a lot going on here. And in the midst of all this, I wrote most of this at a 2018 writer's residency at Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. And so in order to kind of gear myself up, I also wrote a series of odes that I wove throughout the collection. So you'll hear a little bit of those as well. So I'll start with this poem, Arise, which is in some ways about the soccer team that you might remember in Thailand. The boys were caught, and there was a long recovery effort, and they survived. But I think it also speaks to how we try to protect our children, and we can't always. Um, And during that time, I prayed this prayer that I named the Boulder Prayer, because one of my friends had told me that her priest friend was praying for my family, and that the boulder would be rolled away, and that they would walk out into the light. And so you'll hear a reference to that. And that I just clung to that. That was really important to me. Yeah, Boulder versus Boulder. Arise. July 2018, during the Thailand cave rescue. This is the prayer of all parents, in whispers, in screams, in the near silent gasp sinking to groan outside the dark cave of the dead and the maybe gone. Who can tell what the gruesome air is chewing? The unknown hovering its blind hope, too high, too high. This is your language, this mine, lament swirling the undercurrent of belly, twisting the tunnel's neck into blind holes, dead ends, while the now maimed but still living parents beg, arise, come forth. Come forth, the doctor priest I don't know commands my child, who has barricaded herself behind boulders of her own making, too large. Too large, she cries when the divers swim under, around, instruct her to breathe more deeply the length of her labyrinth that turns now into stones not thrown but shouldered by the belief of swimmers, by the petitions of ancients, by the precise calculations of strangers, marking the thin space between supplications rising daily in a common language of grief or relief, swallowed again and again, in the narrow cavern of waiting, someone else's words bobbing steadily in the dark night of the cold, the faithful ritual of rescue ready to begin again for this child, and this one, and even mine, miles below belief and barely breathing. And I should say that I wrote this book before I wrote this book. And this one came out first. And this one is kind of the background to it in some ways. So I know that some of you have read this book and heard me read from this book. And so there's kind of a happy ending, but it was a hard struggle for quite a while. Um, so as I mentioned, I wrote much of this at a writer's residency, and I was just kind of wrote furiously. I made myself draft 3 poems a day. And then, of course, I revised much later on, but just to get things out. I think it helped to be kind of in a different location to address some of the more difficult topics. And so, at a writer's residency, you often spend all this time, intense time alone, kind of creating, and then you have like a communal dinner. So once I went to dinner, and there was an artist who was thinking about sitting at our table, and it clearly didn't want to sit there unless she thought I was somebody very important. So she asked me if I was famous. And so this is kind of my response. The artist at the Colony asked me if I'm famous. If I'm someone she should know, pay attention to, bother having coffee with, talk with about the father who raped her at 12, about my father, about the slant of rainy light after you're weeping for half a life and then some, and when, if you leave the toilet paper unwinding from the top or bottom. And what our papa said the 2 days after, and avocados and kumquats, and the strange geometric shapes that cascade into our dreams 5 days each year before the equinox. And if I'm well known enough for her to pry open my palm and slice my lifelines with an X-Acto knife, would I do that for her? And have I won a Pulitzer yet? And what color were the eyes of God when I looked straight at him for 3 minutes without blinking once? Okay, maybe once. And may she have that last bottle of wine? Could she borrow a glass? And how much does the New Yorker pay? Do I think they would consider her work? She started writing too. Have I slept with anyone there? And does the mold in my studio make my eyes itch in the morning or evening? She's heard both, because she really wants to know about the time the London editor, who knew the New York editor, who knew me from someone at the Colony or raved about my work on Eskimos or transplants or something like that, and later sat on a committee that judged that really important prize. She can't remember which one right now because, thanks again, she had a bit too much of my Merlot. But am I that writer? The one she's heard something about, the one she should know? No, I say, no, though I am someone writing, trying to write, someone. And we were talking before the group about just how nice it is to have a community where you can write about whatever you're dealing with, and so I think this kind of speaks to that in some ways, although we can include men in here as well. In the company of women, always they are surprised by the boulder-sized heft of the hidden beneath the weight of my ordinary eyes that smoke signal they too will survive, give or take a decade or two, give or take the unrelenting midnight whys that unwind into other lives, the discovery of lifting, rock by rock, pebble by pebble, what once was thrown as victim, but now, weight lifted together, becomes stone bridge, becomes path home. And as I mentioned, much of this has to do with dealing with my mother's early stages of dementia. And she was she moved from Ohio, where I grew up, and I could drive there, to Arizona where my sister lived. And it was good because my sister really had the time to spend with her every day, but it just made it harder to see her. But this one is called Alzheimer's Obad, and it's a sonnet. She wakes to gray, no words to guide the way toward sun. His unfamiliar face seems kind enough. She nods hello. Just yesterday she knew his eyes, but now this morning's mind welcomes the past, but not the day. She was someone, woman who woke at 3 a.m. to sing her restless son to sleep, his calm, her cause for celebration. Today the dawn brings no clarity, yet still the stranger comes and draws her curtains wide. She thinks outside is where she left her life, daughters, a son who meet sunrise without her. Look, the light is brighter now. The kind man helps her stand. To see the morning sun, she takes his hand. And then one of the times when I was visiting her at her assisted living facility, I was in the living room area, and the aide was helping her bathe, and all of a sudden I heard this thud, and she had fallen out of the bathtub. And the aide had not been able to catch her in time because she was so slippery. So I went running in, and it was, quite the fiasco. But you'll hear what happens. And this is a pantoum, so you'll hear a lot of repetition of the phrases. A few moments after a fall at her assisted living facility, my mother forgets. The tepid shower, how her body tipped backwards off the stool, over the tub, head smacking bathroom tile. The surprised aide reaches too late the frail body, tries to rewind time. The fallen body back in the tub on the stool. The second before the aide is soaping the thin torso. The second after she is reaching too late the frail body, sprawled on the cold floor. The daughter comes running. The second before the aide soaps the thin torso, turns to adjust the spray, then the clatter, the naked woman sprawled on the cold floor, the daughter running in from the other room, afraid. Whose face is screaming? Turning to adjust the shower spray, the aide hears the clatter, her hands slippery. She cannot catch the woman, or, afraid, face the one from the other room. Every face is screaming. Is there blood? Is she breathing? Lift and cradle her. Her hands slippery. She cannot catch the woman whose every bone protrudes. Will they break? Is there blood? Is she breathing? Lift and cradle her. She is as light as a corpse. Her every bone protrudes. Did they break? Old woman, hold me tight. Smile at your daughter. You are as light as a corpse, but yourself, alive enough to forget everything. The old woman smiles at the daughter, holds tight the aides who carries her to safety, dries her, put her to bed. Alive, she is enough herself to forget everything. After the fall, she is dried, carried safely to bed. The rest fades. No head smacking the tile, no surprised aide. She is herself, alive, a daughter beside her. It is enough. No tepid shower, her body tipping, no cold tile, no surprised aide. Safe in bed, the rest fades. Tepid memories tip. After the fall, she forgets. She is alive again, only in the moment. Is it enough? And that one of the things that's really shocked me is, I was so upset and worried about her and made sure she was okay, and so was the aide. But 10 minutes later, my mother didn't remember a thing about it. Didn't remember that it had happened. Okay, I'll read one more ode for this book. It's the last poem in the book, and then I'll go on to Small Earthly Space. Ode to Everything. Enough of the lamentations. Open the window and sing. The world is awash with world, color-dripping globe always tilting into some or another. Clouds stretching wide, plump happiness. Even in the noisy stage show of showers, such sunny ovations. And the birds, overpopulating every poem. Swoop here for free. Swallow, hawk, robin, gull, eagle. What else can be written but wings that wave horizon to horizon? And enough of windows, praise doors, step out with arms open and eyes gathering vim and vision, grandeur trailing from worm and woodchuck, branch puzzles of woods, open boat of breeze, all brimming with hey and hallelujah and celebrate. Such green giving of thanks, such miraculous mercy of earth, calm valley, and even this rugged rocky chain we claim now as family, claiming praise as respite, holding close each breaking day, dangerous yet divine in all its gorgeous glory. Okay, so that's this book. I'm going to share my screen and give you a taste at least of the two other books. So you'll see the cover of this, and some of you may recognize this painting because this is Annalise painting that's in the museum book. It's the Your Move painting. So if you have that book, you can go back and see it. And I hadn't even thought about, having that, but the people at Wild House Publisher, when they heard that my daughter was an artist, they wanted to see some of her work as a possible cover. And it turned out to be the perfect thing because seeing things really ties into all these questions that she has in the image. Why would I lie to you? Why would I tell you the truth? Here it is, kind of larger. So it was really a nice way to include her. Oh, and I forgot to read. Well, I won't for the sake of time, but one of the poems I was going to read was Ode to Daughter as Artist, which kind of talks about her painting style. And that's in the book too. Okay, so the next book, these are such different books, is an ekphrastic collection with Karen Elias. And we've also been on this series together to talk about our other collaborations. And this is a book that really focuses on the environment. So early this week, we gave a presentation at an art museum for Earth Day, which was really a lot of fun. And Karen just has these wonderfully evocative, inspiring photographs. And for this piece, we have a lot of poppies in the book. And we also follow kind of the journey of the curlew bird. That's the first poem that we started on, some images that Karen had done of curlews, and to kind of explore ecological devastation and climate change and different things happening, unfortunately, to the earth right now. So I'm going to read a few of these so you get a sense of that. So some of our inspiration came from quotations from Ali Smith's poetic novel companion piece. And here's one of the quotes that we wrote about and that we were inspired by. The Tightrope Walker. The curlew exists, the story goes, to weld the heaven to the earth. Between streaks of sun, the curlew balances its own feathered weight. Sickle of a beak poised and pointing, raised wings offsetting gravity. Staring straight ahead, it two steps across the small earthly space of eternity. The fine line that binds sky and dirt welds together every season of belief and reason. Is this the story we too tightrope across, that neatly separates up from down, before from ever after? Or speckled bird as confident as ancient prophets, is all air paradox? Your strut across now I can't see the words on here, across wire, sand, space, instead the unzipping of all our divisions, choice and vision melted, one heaven, one earth, undone by beauty. And I found these images very moving. These are Karen's grandkids. They're kind of all grown up now, but she has several images where they're kind of superimposed over kind of devastation and the fires, homesick after fires, locked out, of certain areas because of lack of funding. She has one also that has to do with the hurricanes. And it was good. Not the green-gray sludge snaking to the river's edge, not the sun's overdone orb baking the snake to a dry bed of dust, not the hands of a man cracking open stones in a barren bed of dirt beside a field void of crops or trees or snakes or soul, not the fracking or the culture draining pipe, and the morning and the evening of the umpteenth billion year, and it was not good, not good, not. And I wrote this one after the 2018 wildfire in Curlew, Washington, but of course, we're seeing all this happening right now, including in New Jersey, I guess now. But I was also thinking of California. But you can see that she has superimposed the image of the Curlew over a map of Curlew, Washington. And then you can see all the flames, etc. going. It's just amazing to see these images close up. The witnesses. Near the confluence of Long Alec Creek and the Kettle River, the Curlew watches its namesake, town of 100, as residents stare toward the west in hail fear. Smoke rewrites the sky where the Curlew once flew. Flames attack its map and habitat. Ridgelines pulse with what is singed, feathers, pines, mountains, horizon streaked with regret, and the burnt promises of those not there to witness the incineration of branch, the contagion of spark, the long, slow burn of loss. O Curlew and Curlews, obscure enough to hide once within these safe acres, even you grief has found, even you. And then I'll end for this book on the last poem in the book that gives us a little bit of hope. And again, there are a lot of other poems besides the Curlew poems, but this kind of is woven throughout. Hope is the thing with feathers, Emily Dickinson. The curlew is the thing with feathers, is the beak wildly waving wide ribbons that hold back the strands of storm. That's the thing about curlews, about hope. Red sky in the morning, warning and delight intersecting, flag-like ribbons curling into another day, maybe. The curlew is the thing, even in the middle of a hurricane, even on a fragile bough, while Earth's vast tornado of despair keeps widening, widening. The curlew is the thing with feathers, is the beak wildly waving its frayed but flapping ribbons of persistence, of hope. Red sky at night, sailor's delight, sky widening, widening into curlews, into hope. That's the thing. So we come to another very different book. And this is a book, yeah, how can I look it up when I don't know how it's spelled? Spelling mnemonics and grammar tricks. So it has poems that riff off of I before E except after C. The principal is your pal. When two vowels go walking, the first does the talking, and also like when to use that apostrophe with its and its. When to use I, when to use me, whomever and whoever. So it's a book that's more for teens and for adults, for teachers, for writers, and it's just fun. And then Karen has these so I also worked on with Karen Elias on this, and that's what I think kind of made it work after that's 20 years of kind of it being dormant. And she creates these witty illustrations to go with them. So I'll read one of these, and then I'm going to read one more from Seeing Things that kind of ties things together. So here's a way to remember what's the difference between dessert and desert. A double helping of S, please. Yes, I'll take another S in my dessert. Another slice of strudel, an extra sampling of strawberry shortcake, a smidgen more of spritz, twin pecan tassies, double cheesecake snack squares. No, thank you, please. Not a single desert, that dusty Sahara sandbox where I crave scores of civilizations to satisfy this persistent thirst for all that's sweet and sugary. Okay, and I'll read again one more from Seeing Things. And I think this one, I wrote it in the midst of writing this book and just to kind of give myself courage to get through some tough things. But I think it also speaks to environmental issues, things that we're going through now. I don't know if it has, I guess you could apply it to spelling. I don't know. That might be a stretch. But this is called Begin. Just a single rough gray pebble, as slight as a fingernail, as tiny as a chip off a full-formed wish, like an irritant wedged between foot and sandal that could, with much patience and persistence, be saved and made into something not big, but on its way to small, then eventually larger, a statue even, holding up a torch. But this is not about construction. There are a zillion crushed stones as far as your peripheral vision can see, and they are monochrome and crowded, and they are as tall as twin towers and wrap around the world. Face the wall, put your hands on it, your fingers a chisel. It is a single rough gray pebble. Start with that. Okay. Thank you very much for listening.
Oh, thank you so much. But I'm going to ask you to read the poem about your daughter, the
Oh,
portrait of your
great.
daughter as the artist.
Okay.
We have time, and I
Yes,
just want to
okay.
keep you going, and then we'll break it down. We're coming back.
Yes. And since many of you got to meet her online, I did want to read this. So thank you for giving me a little more time for that. And I think it does kind of go with the painting a little bit, even though I didn't write it specifically for that painting. Ode to daughter as artist. Praise for the spontaneous paint splatter, for the blank, wide face of canvas, the thin stroke of clear, the unannounced swirl and burst of emergence, oils and newsprint surging into bright, wild collage, hue and creativity tottering on eternity, one day only, or not. The heft of 3D spinning now into something unlike anything, like steady chalk or premeditated ink. No, rather, thought and arm high on epiphany, and the brilliant eye that arrives there in an ordinary room, on an ordinary day. Art and its dizzying versions of birth. Thank you.
Ah, so glad you read that. Oh, that's so
Thank you
good.
for thank you for
Oh,
allowing that.
I love it. And also because we got to meet her, so it's even
Yes.
more special. Oh, that was
Yeah.
just fabulous. And it had a lot of her qualities of like these bursts of creativity, the light, the energy, how things all move about. Oh, it's fabulous. Life
Yeah, and I
giving.
think, seeing these two books together, you can understand even more how what a joy it was to do the museum book with her.
Yes.
That
It's
was
wild that the book that kind of preceded and has that dimension of really before you get the happy ending came out second as
yeah,
opposed to being first. But that's interesting in and of itself. There's so many things in the chat section, and I wanted to because it's something we were talking about beforehand, and I think that Judy said it. Let me see if I could find it. Yes, your poems are so brilliant and they're carrying out of multiple related issues. And I thought, Judy, could we maybe add to that or like what you were, because it's a complexity and you have that same kind of ability to really deep dive. Um, but
she does.
Marjorie also brings in like multiple things that I found amazing to see. Oh, unmute Judy first.
I was reacting to the Emily Dickinson Hope is a Thing with Feathers and the way Emily figured in that. And oh gosh, I can't remember. There were 3 or 4 other kind of aspects of that poem that were all brought together in one poem. And I want to call it ideation. I mean, there's such a strength of idea behind your poems. Rich idea, many tentacled idea. They're
I like that.
echoing, and I think that's amazing. I truly do.
Yeah.
It's marvelous.
Yeah, Marjorie, is that like, I know when you write, you were saying like being on the retreat was so invaluable and you were writing 2 or 3 poems a day and then editing later. I, how different are your first drafts from your last, out of curiosity?
Usually I revise quite a bit. I
I
think
see.
things came out more whole at the retreat than they did than they typically do, because I was just so focused and I just kind of went from one hard topic to another. I just kept kind of forcing myself to get it down. And then of course the book still changed because I sent it out for 6 years. I think I sent it out 100 some places, um,
Wow.
and and it was a finalist a couple times, and I got some good comments, and then I did some reshuffling. Some friends helped me. Well, actually, some of the poems in the museum book were in Seeing Things. I had some of the art poems in there at first, and then I had the advice from some friends that it was just too much.
Hmm.
It was I was trying to cover too much, and so I kind of pulled those out. I had a series of poems that were all based on the American Visionary Art Museum in Baltimore.
Hmm.
And those were the
Love
first
that
ekphrastic
place.
poems. Yeah, those are the first ekphrastic poems that I had written, and those were in Seeing Things. And I pulled them out, and then later I started, writing the ekphrastic poems with Anna
Mhm.
Lee and with Karen and some other people. And so then they came together as a separate book. Um, but so there was
Just
quite a bit of shuffling
it's
around, but the core was still there. The
Yeah,
poems
I
about
was
my
just
mother.
curious because, for example, the Pantoum about, that the form itself works so perfectly. I don't think and I think Regina said something about the musicality of that was just incredibly powerful and haunting.
Now that was one of the last poems that I put in the book because that happened during the pandemic, or after the pandemic, when I got to go and visit her again. So there were a few that, that I was able to kind of add at the end
Yeah.
that went along with what I was already writing about. I haven't written any poems about my mother after she died. I wrote quite a bit about this, I think the grief with some of the early dementia and being long distance away, that kind of grief too.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know, it's been harder to write anything afterwards, because I think I got so much of it out beforehand.
I was just gonna say that. I
Yeah.
mean, Marjorie, I relate to that because Alzheimer's is so much about like saying goodbye so often and day after day, or I mean that's why it's called the long goodbye. And so I haven't I think I've only written one. So that I connect to that. I resonate with that concept. And also, I mean, what you were writing about during the pandemic, being separated with her is grief, is powerful. Um that Pantone really knocked me out though, and I, did it start off that way, or did you know, I mean, I'm just curious, like, did the form come first,
Yeah.
or did the poem itself inform the form?
I think I had the form in mind, um, because there was so much kind of repetition of running in and the fear and trying to see things from my perspective and the aide's perspective. And she was also very concerned, and worried, and
Yes.
and called the doctors and all that, and made sure everything was okay. But um, so I think, yeah, I think it's got into the pantoum almost right away.
Mm.
After I got a few lines in, then I thought, oh, this is what's going to happen here. And I do find that a lot of times when I'm dealing with the tougher topics, that I tend to lean more towards form when it's a harder topic. Um,
Yes.
I don't know
That
why.
makes
It
sense
gives
to
it
me.
gives that container.
It's a container, yeah,
Yeah.
for something that is so big, so unwieldy. Um, Yes, that makes sense. Do other people have questions? And I know, Regina, you just wrote something about uh your experience, which I think is very helpful.
Yeah, I was just when you were talking about Marjorie, you were talking about your mother and how you had written so much before or going up to and then
Mhm.
after. There was I can definitely relate to that. For me, it was almost like, well, she's better now, because I have that in my struct my structure, my faith system, or or whatever you want to call it, that
Right.
there's
No.
something that
And I think you and I
whatever
come from
was
that
lost.
same place. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I
She
mean,
shows up going around.
she
Huh?
wasn't actually diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but her husband had Alzheimer's. After my father died, she got remarried, and he died after going through Alzheimer's. My father-in-law, had those long periods of dementia. So there's a lot of kind of overlap between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know with my mother, she one of the she had a aphasia very early. So while I knew she, recognized and she could say some things very quickly, it became, it, the communication was just, and she was
Yeah.
frustrated. It was a lot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But that was one instance where I was kind of glad that she didn't remember,
Yeah, it has its uses, not remembering.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad had Alzheimer's, and it was never officially announced as that, but it was a form of dementia, and it is long goodbye. My husband has something right now, so bang bang, shoot me through the heart,
Yeah.
fate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And I think
That's
Yeah,
I
it's
think that
unimaginable.
house
I
would
think
be
it's like an epidemic in the U.S. I mean, people are living longer, and
I think that's
the
it.
number of people who are afflicted is just
Yeah.
extraordinary. There's practically no one I know in that generation who isn't afflicted.
Yeah, it does
It's
seem.
just,
I
yeah.
think we live long enough to have it start happening. And that poem, that particular poem, it seemed to me perfectly suited to the story that it was telling, because there's such a fractioning of points of view, of sensation, of experience. It's like a broken mirror,
Yeah.
but each part of the broken mirror reflects, and and I think it's interesting too. I mean, you told the story of the shower because that's where she fell, but as a nurse and as also as somebody who took care of a relative with dementia, the shower is a flashpoint.
Oh, yeah.
True
It's just
story.
they get cold and they can't get warm again. And when I finally got my mother-in-law into the shower, and I tried to make the water tepid and all, not, and she started screaming, murder, murder, murder.
Yeah. Oh God.
It just, and you're laughing and crying at the same time, and it's just,
Yeah.
and it's such a universal, like you said, it's such a universal experience for us anymore, because it just seems like so many go down that path. It just,
Yeah.
I love that poem. It was
It
it
is.
was a perfect fit.
Yes. Thank you,
That's one that
Mary.
I've just started reading out loud, so it's
Mm.
good to hear because I wasn't sure if it would
It
be
Oh,
reads
it just,
confusing.
very
it did.
well, Marjorie.
Yeah,
Very well.
Yeah.
yeah.
Very well. I don't think I have loved the form before, but I don't think I've ever felt as passionate about a marriage between form and content as I did in your reading. Um, it was haunting, and it's one that'll stay with me. I just wanted to point out that Mary Ann Miller had to leave early, and she said, Marjorie, thank you so much. So happy to hear more from Seeing Things and a peek at your newest. I'm so sorry that she couldn't stay, is what she said. But I wanted to make sure you got that message. Any other questions or thoughts or things that occurred? We really traveled a lot of
I'm
ground.
curious. I'm curious, Marjorie, since it sounds like I'm so impressed that you were able to deal with writing the poems without huge, I'm still writing my mother and father poems, and they've been gone for years. Do you feel like you've covered it? Or do you feel like there's still going to be poems coming up about that?
I
It's
think
such
there
a,
will
it's,
probably be poems coming up. I did work on some poems about, I found a bunch of poems after my mother died. She had boxed up, and I had all these postcards from her grandfather, who was a traveling salesman, that he had sent to her from all over the country, mostly in like the Midwest. And so I wrote some poems about her childhood and her upbringing and things like that. Um, so I think maybe that was a way too of acknowledging kind of some of the things that she's been through. Um, but not as much about, the end of her life.
right, right.
I wrote a whole book about, my father died after an unsuccessful heart transplant. So I wrote a lot about, that. I wrote a whole book about that, but that was, that happened in 93. And,
Mm,
and so that was such a different kind of loss,
yeah.
because I was growing up with it. He had his first heart attack at 38 and he lived till 65. So that was,
Wow.
a whole different experience than what my mother went through.
Yeah.
So I think,
So
maybe no
such a
processing.
young age to have a heart attack, not even
Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
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 So
So I'm curious about the form question. I think one has to have forms like the Pantoum really internalized in order to have them work out that well. I mean, so do you have many forms you feel are that internalized? I think you do from reading your work.
I really, yeah, I really like the sonnet, the villanelle, the pantoum,
Yeah,
sometimes the triolet. Those are the ones that I think that the sense of repetition
yeah.
is something I keep coming back to.
But isn't it true that you have to have used them often enough that when you have the impulse like that shower experience, you've had enough experience with the form that it helps you rather than hinders you.
Maybe so. It did feel like the natural
Yeah,
pattern to fall into.
yeah,
Because your thoughts are just going and repeating like that too. Your
yeah,
fears are repeating like that.
yeah, yeah,
So.
yeah,
But I think that's interesting, Judy, that maybe that's, why some people will be so successful with a form is that it's not just that they went to try out the form, it's that the form has kind of lived within them for a while, they've practiced, et cetera. And so that when that flow happens, they say, oh, this would look nicely in this vase. It's kind of like having a selection of vases. You look
yeah,
at this bouquet and you say, this would be lovely in this
yeah,
container.
yeah,
Whereas I don't oftentimes, so I find forms very restrictive and, it's not something I've spent time kind of, in contemplation or relationship with. So that's interesting. It
yeah.
makes me want to practice to see if something might feel more comfortable.
Yeah, for me, there are certain forms that I've done often enough, but even then, like the villanelle, I have
Yes.
actually written
Oh,
quite a
no, I
few
like, yeah.
villanelles.
Yeah.
But recently, I was trying to write about something that was extremely difficult to write about, and I thought maybe this will work in a villanelle because I need something to constrain my emotions in some sense because they're just too much. But I tried it and it actually didn't work because while I've written quite a few villanelles, perhaps not quite enough.
But
So
I love that you knew that.
did it work in another form though? I mean, not a necessarily
not yet.
but yeah.
Not
And
yet.
sestinas sometimes are helpful too, because there are certain, the
Yeah,
words can really help you
yeah,
out too.
yeah. The words can keep on moving through it, so
Yeah.
that can help. Yeah,
But it's long.
yeah. It's very long. There's a lot to fill up, and the villanelle is
Huge
extremely
commitment.
constraining. So the two lines that you choose have to be able to be repeated all those times and still be resonant. So that's very tricky. So anyway,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Deep admiration for people that do that, that pull off a form. Um, And I have a feeling, Judy, you'll find it, because that's one thing I see you two as having some similarities with like passions
I
and
think we do.
perseverance. I feel that strongly.
Interesting.
I, I
Well,
would
thank you,
almost
because I love
encourage
being
y'all-
compared to Judy.
Oh, I like
I almost would
the
encourage you two to try something together.
Mm, mm,
Maybe so. Yeah.
what a great
Because I
idea.
have a feeling your interest and your passions would match and build upon. I
Mm.
would find that book. I would buy it multiple copies, multiple copies.
Wow.
Any other questions or thoughts before we move to open mic?
You know, I just want to admit this. I am generally not a fan of form. Like for myself writing, it's a no. And usually I don't care for it in other people's work because I think so often it feels so contrived. But Marjorie, oh my goodness. Like I am a huge fan of you and your form poems because they are just haunting. They're just I just wanted to say that as a person who is very close to hating form. I
Mm,
love what you do with form.
Well,
It's
even
like
more of a compliment then.
you are the reason that there is form. So thank you for that.
yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
It's so
Well, I
good.
think that the thing is you want people to recognize the form after the fact. You don't want them
You
to
don't
think
want them
it's
to
form.
Yeah,
scream at you.
And I think that
yeah,
does
what
come
you
from
do.
knowledge and practice. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your form works for me so much because the poems just like I'm in the feel and the repetition and the pattern without going, oh, there she's doing that ABAB thing or the oh, here comes a couplet. Like I never feel that. It's just like the poem just feels like magic. It's so it's beautiful.
I think
Thank you for doing that.
Thank
I
you.
agree entirely. And I do think that comes from both genius and practice because
Hmm.
when you, I mean, and also teaching, I mean, if you've taught the sonnet a million times,
Yes.
you realize that one of the things you want to teach is that a sonnet that almost doesn't sound like a sonnet because the meter is iambic pentameter, but it's so varied in terms of the stresses, and there are so many feet that don't
Hmm.
fit the pattern that you hardly hear that you're it's not the dump the dump the dump the dump the dump over and over again, which drives you mad. But that some of that knowledge comes from looking at sonneteers.
Hmm.
Through history, I mean, Shakespeare's sonnets are very irregular in terms
Yeah.
of the meter.
Yeah.
They
That's
really
true.
don't pounce on the meter. And then the final syllable. I mean, there's so many things you can do to kind of almost hide the rhyme.
Yeah.
So I mean, from teaching, I think I learned, even though I haven't used it that much, I've only written very few sonnets. Makes me want
And
to
I
try.
think you're right though, Judy, is that it's almost what I got there was there's a training of the ear that happens through
Yeah.
teaching and the scholarship of reading and teaching others how to read
Absolutely.
work or scan or do scansion and then how
Absolutely.
to do
It's only
forms.
the teachers who didn't understand it, who hated poetry, who taught you about iambic pentameter in a way that made it a prison instead of freedom.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because they
I
didn't
mean, I
feel it.
think of
They didn't feel it. If you had bad teachers in elementary school,
yeah.
Yeah.
they
I
didn't
mean,
feel it. They were forced to.
I fall in Karen's camp of form feels, you know, constrictive. I've never successfully felt like
Yeah.
comfortable, and I've tried different forms, but always makes me feel like a bathing suit that gives you a wedgie. I just don't want to
Yes,
wear it.
right?
Great metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's lots of
Yes.
things that I haven't tried. I haven't tried a golden shovel yet.
Oh,
I don't think I've ever written a haiku.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, I
and
think I've
that's
written
something
2
that
haikus
most
my
people have
entire life.
written. So
Because they
Yeah.
oddly enough haiku for a period of time because there was a restaurant that would give you free meals. Do you remember this Akahana in Carborough had an annual haiku
That's
contest
I love
and
that.
food.
I like
And
that.
so of course I was motivated because that was my big win. My ex-husband, I'd be like, I'm gonna treat us out to dinner. I won the haiku contest again.
I love
oh,
that.
Evidently I have to be food motivated to do something. I don't
That's
know. Maybe
it's
we
all
could talk
good. Whatever
Oh,
it
that's so
takes.
good. I adore you guys. Thank you so very
this
much,
is
Marjorie, for coming
delightful.
again. And I do encourage you and Judy to do something because I kid you not, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Um, If we can move to open mic, if there's anybody that would like me to pause during your reading for whatever reasons, remind me and I will do so. Shamala, we start with you.
Okay.
Certainly.
Some new old poem smell on this because I wrote it a long time ago, like 2023, in Susie Q. Smith. Probably some of you folks know her in her in one of her classes, and that was like fairly soon after I was getting over cancer, and I just forgot I had it, or it would have gone into this current chapbook because it fits. But anyway, um, I talked to a seal at the edge of the ocean, partway up a cliff, on a tiny ledge balanced above nothing but the crashing foam around sharp-toothed rocks. Tired from dancing after fishing in a dress of blubber so thick she laughed when it tore a whole third of the way across her body, playing on in reddening water surrounded by red seaweed, slippery kelp, and clumsy pups, with a bark like laughter even as she bleeds. Then climbed my seal sister to rest on her ledge alone. A bliss to rest while wounds healed. Two caretakers, me on the edge of my cliff on a frozen day, blubber of belief in things I cannot see keeping me warm. She snuffling on her rock, whiskers twitching, content to rest a moment as the skin knit into long, unashamed scars of mother love on her speckled body, bleeding but strong enough, still to merge into the rock she rests on. We comfort each other, ask and answer with our eyes. How, sister? And why? With great love, but without answer, while far below, the crashing ocean reminds us that the other side of dancing is death.
Oh, wow,
I like
that
completely
last
forgot.
line.
I forgot all the poems that I wrote in this class because it was, at that time.
It's such a critical time to be, writing and dealing with so much, but wow, read the comments that came up because I don't want you to miss that.
Susie's class is just
So you
incredible.
found these again. I hope that you pull them together and see what you got to say still.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I have Judy next.
Oh, okay. I've been working for many years and only produced about 10 poems that are based on Vivian Mayer's photos. So this is one of them. And I just want to put the slide in the chat in case you want to look at it. Let me see if I can get this fast enough to do it.
I made you co-host so that you can add it that way if you want to
Oh.
share screen.
Oh,
If that
I
helps.
think I'll just not waste more time and keep
Okay.
other people from. So let me just put this in there it is. Okay, I have it there. If you want to look at it, you can take a look. Or somebody can share screen. Anyway, I won't waste more time on that. Okay, this just came out, and it's called Acculturation, and it's after this kind of coming off this photo of Vivian Mayer's. Acculturation. The towering hair of 18th century women, part real, part not, took hours to concoct, and so was left as is for weeks until it had to be perfumed to mask the smell, and long lice scratchers used to soothe the itch. And yet, those bells succumbed to their encumbrance, maybe even felt stately and elegant. The waists of 19th century women were cinched past breathing. Their skirts were wide as the muddy streets, hooped cages underneath layers and layers of crinolines, and all the tears exploded into flame near fireplaces or lit tapers. And yet, breathlessly they dressed, let their waists be crushed for easy encirclement by two rougher hands. And we, mid-20th century, early teenage women to be, went meekly to the salon to be bleached and teased, to be highlighted like gifts with silver and gold foil from a can, until our lively locks were tensely coiled and sprayed in place for the special occasion. And we stood stiff, afraid to move and ruin the still life, and tried not to show shock when the hairdresser, so pleased with the power of his own expertise, sealed his accomplishment with a brazen kiss, confirming our fitness for those delights we hadn't yet acknowledged we desired.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And that's what I mean by deep diving in top topics. Yeah, Karen just wrote, oh, Vivian Mayer's photos. I'm such a fan. Yeah, what a fabulous ending. Oh, and the image, and I got a smell. I'm sorry. It was the Aquanet. I suddenly was like, I'm an 80s girl. I could smell Aquanet as you
Yeah, well,
started
that'll
to
work.
say. Regina, I'm coming to you.
All right. Hello, everyone. So this is something I wrote like 2 or 3 days ago. I'll send it out, but you know, just wanted to share. It actually came about when my husband and I were watching television, and I cannot remember the context, but the person was saying that the sanctuary had become a tomb. And so that just resonated with me. I immediately pulled out my phone and pulled up a Google Doc and typed sometime sanctuary, sometime tomb. And I didn't put an S on the end because, like in my familial dialect, we might put an S and we might not. And when I said it, I said sometime sanctuary, sometime tomb. So anyway, sometime sanctuary, sometime tomb. Sometimes the light of the Carolina sky shines bright, waters lapping, sand squishing between my toes, air salted with memory, like holy, like mother, like body born free, like a temperance that did not swathe me into submission, like sanctuary, like oyster shells paving my Aunt Reba's driveway, like old folks telling tales with cusses sliding out, like amazement, pure amazement that they never told me to hate most times. Because hate ain't God and God ain't hate, but he can be wrath and in the right circumstances, like when hateful people try to strike a difference for no reason other than you getting happier, like the world is your sanctuary, but they say the world ain't your sanctuary. And just to make sure they turn the world over and try to make the world a tomb for you of their own design. They sing tomb songs, resurrect tomb flags, fight wars and build tomb prisons, scare and maim the bodies they want to lay in the tombs. But God says we will rise and fly like angels in this world and in the next, and our enemies will be cast down, and there will be no troubling, no troubling, no troubling, no troubling. This world keeps spinning, and the tombs will rise, and the tombs will try, but by and by they will fall, fall, fall.
Oh, you just burned it all down, Regina. That was amazing. And I had a moment where I suddenly thought something that I see in both you and Marjorie and some other people that I adore's work is the ability to hold like so like heavy grief topics and hope at the same time. And I wonder, for a moment, I thought that's that bridge of faith or something that makes that something you can hold at the same time. I was just,
Just the mere fact, and I come from a lot of places. I always say I got blood on several continents. But
yeah,
um the thing that has always kind of resonated when I really get really down is that some of my ancestors were the people were determined that they were not going to move forward, and they did well, um and so I won't even get into those long stories, but to say that, sometimes, sometimes what people have for you or want for you, that's not what your uh destination will be. That is something that is not of their they can't stop what is meant for you. That's what I'm trying to say. And
Now
so,
we are at the prayer of the boulder,
right.
right?
Nice.
I mean, and honestly, that was resonating with what you were reading, this fresh ink, this new poem,
Mm.
with what Marjorie said. And I heard Boulder first, of course, Boulder like moving, and it made me think of Easter, but then I also heard Boulder as in be bold. There's something about that bold, unbreakable perseverance.
Right, right. I agree with that. Sometimes I can't get the words out that I want to say because I'm so just undone by what I see going on around me, what we read, what we, are just hearing. And it just takes my breath, takes my words. And so then they just come out like this. And when I was listening to Marjorie, I just was so Marjorie, when you were reading, I might not even, because I don't remember. I mean, I do remember, but I have to go back and look at it. But what I'm saying is, when you were reading, the rhythm that you were using in that was very, very, very familiar to me. And so I said to myself, I have to find something that is going to, because I didn't want to let that go.
Mm.
That that rhythm. It was just, I it's beyond words.
That's the bridge I see between y'all's work, is that music, that rhythm, that repetition, knowing when to, I don't know, have words talk to each other even after you've said them, they're still talking. It's really powerful. Karen, I got you next. My poor little needle
Oh,
ant friend.
right, needle ant woman. Okay, I wish I were reading one of my mother poems because I've been writing a lot of them, and she's been gone a lot of years, but I can't read them out loud yet. So I'm going to go with this one. And I'm so thankful for the other people's poems that touch me so deeply because I think it gives me a way into my own truths a lot of times when I can't just like come running at them straightforward. So this is one. Laura and Christy and I were kind of doing a Zoom not too long ago, and we sometimes we do this. We'll just like pick a random poem off the internet and we'll read it to each other, and then just like spend 5 minutes writing in response. So this is a poem that came from Kim Adonizio's poem. The first line is the deepest. And I'm thinking it was about a pretty rough point in her life that's just kind of got me thinking about, yeah, I've had those points. And it really made me think, just remember how many different lives I've lived. And I've lived in a lot of different houses, and every place that I've lived has been a different life. So this is the first deep, and so what I'm doing in the poem is I revisited in my head all of the apartments and homes I've lived in, and like what road were they on and where were they. So it's kind of a list poem in a way. So the first deep can be the shallowest I know, of the days of my inglorious days, a reminder to myself. I know, hit or miss, drunken slotted spoons measuring raw fists of cruel, plain, white rice. The streets cough vinegar and piss up late, but you got off the shot and that was luck. You put away your dreaming days, your merely mortal joy sticking. A razor's kiss can be such hit or miss, and then such sweet, sweet borrowed tea. It was the quick town and then the borough, Surrey, Westridge, Timber, Meadow, Guilford, Lawndale, Cottage, Tomahawk, McCormick, Fernwood, Big Rock, Weather, Spoon, and Cumberland. And hindsight isn't helpful, lest ye be a poet. Drive, road, lane, street, avenue, drive, place, drive, street, drive, lane, street, road. Did 'em all, and ruby slippers weren't approved by any guidance counselor. You have always been so tender-footed anyway. I know. Oh, those so many moves. I know.
Adore that. Oh, that's so good. That, what's interesting is that you balance this playful language with hard topics too. And I really like your turn of wit. I have always enjoyed that in your work. And it works very well in this poem.
It was a fun weirdo poem to write for me, just thinking about Olga. Oh yeah, Olga in that place. Oh, the things I did there. Yeah.
Well, we wrote some fun stuff down in the chat section, so definitely check it out. I've got Cal, then Mary, then Christy, just to let y'all know. All right, Cal.
Okay. There we go. I changed to this poem after our little discussion before this began. It's based on an autobiographical story that was told by a sort of famous speaker at a big AA meeting, and it's called Peace. After a long day in cold Chicago, a man I knew smiled, anticipating relief. Plains and lake and high buildings have their own weather. It moves with soot and dust, scraping sounds of plastic shards, paper, and leaves against brick. Though his home was small, it kept out this wind. Though his furniture was cardboard, there was cushioning in this corrugation and warmth trapped in the boxes he pulled over his legs and chest. His greatest blessing was not his body's heat or the small silence, but the smooth feel of cheap whiskey named for a king, soft in his esophagus, the first sharpness in his belly soon numbing to quiet his core. He sighed and smiled and took another nice hit. Outside, the pain was blown away by a gust that shook the sheet metal with a muffled noise that rattled his steel sarcophagus. It was the door above his feet, his trash capsule being compromised from above. His dad. Son, is that you in there? Someone down the corner so you climb in. Damn it, spat the man. Leave me alone. The father answered, Are you all right? I'm doing just fine, Dad. Just fine, was his retort. Okay, then, said the father, and forcing the door shut with a hollow bang. Just fine, he said, tipping the bottle a little higher as the wind outside rose, taking him with it to a land of warmth and peace from which there may someday be no return. Just living his life one day at a time.
Wow.
That's it.
I should tell you the secret meaning of fine. Probably most people know it. Effed up, insecure, neurotic, and egotistical. All right, Mary, and then Christy.
Okay. This is one that just came out in McQueen's Quinterly. It's called You Promised. You promised you could always give me something to cry about. find a space still unprotected, a door unlocked, a book in my hands instead of a broom or rag. Your rage exploding so bright and hot, I curl into myself like a threatened armadillo, my armored skin a last ditch defense when there is nowhere to run or hide, no way to block the burn of your voice, the weight of your fists, your belt snaking toward me like a tongue, a whip moving so fast it boomed like a jet, faster than sound, too fast to catch with any words I found, ground to a whisper under your outrage, your anger and annihilation like the weight of God. Even now, in different rooms, I cower at the threat of a raised voice, the sound of anger rising, still unspent, even though no arm is raised, no fist clenched, nothing but that fury in a living voice, my sad inheritance, those moments etched like acid on my skin, a net of fire, a web of pain, still holding me, defeated in my place.
Oh, yes. Powerful, Mary. Please look at the comments that are coming up. Yep. Nothing but that fury and like the weight of God. A lot of us were writing the same phrases at the same time that really hit home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy, we have you as our last open mic.
Okay, so I had never written an ekphrastic poem before, and I didn't really like it. But when I went to the reading with Marjorie and her daughter, I was so caught up with the one piece, Your Move, that's actually the book cover, that I had to write this poem. And so I've never read it out loud. And Marjorie is the first person that I sent it to. So I'm going to read it tonight. This is called I Am My Own Alice. Don't look at me if you can't vision where I am coming to, up, away from down, under a thumb, left of being a go-between, knowing I am on a right path, toppling upon, out cornering squares, not shuffling my feet through anybody else's stacked deck, determined to meet myself at my own there, not making your move on my board. My life is not traveling nowhere. I am the only queen here. Thank you.
That's a perfect one to end on. And I love that Marjorie and her daughter inspired this after you saw the cover. That's fabulous. Yep. And you are the only queen, is what Shamala just said.
That's great.
All right, guys. It was wonderful to see everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. And thank you so much, Marjorie.
Thank you so much, everybody. This was a great evening. Thanks.
Guys.